Harrowing escape from North Korea. A young soldier risking his life driving across the no man's land of the DMZ.
The radio? The hostages.
Imagine being locked in a pitch-black cell for years or forced to fight other inmates for your next meal. These aren't scenes from a horror movie. They're real punishments in some of the world's most brutal prisons. Today, we'll look at the dark side of 20 correctional facilities where punishment goes beyond bars and isolation. From medieval-style tortures to psychological torture, these prisons employed truly terrifying methods to control their inmates. And let's warn you, this video contains disturbing content that some viewers may find upsetting. Brace yourself for a journey through the most ruthless prisons on Earth. Number 20. Camp 14, North Korea. Let's start our list with Camp 14 in North Korea, a place so secret and cruel it's hard to believe it exists. This massive prison, about 60 square miles big, has been around since the 1950s. What makes it awful is their 3 generations rule. If you do something the government doesn't like, they don't just lock you up, they throw your whole family in, to even your kids and grandkids. Prisoners here work non-stop in dangerous mines and factories. They're always hungry, eating mostly watery corn soup. Some even eat bugs to stay alive. Guards are super mean and kill people who try to escape. One guy, Shin Dong-yuk, was actually born in a camp and managed to get out, the only person ever to do so. He saw his own mom and brother killed for trying to escape.
It's not comparable to any other nation in the world. Terrible human rights violations beyond anyone's imagination. Those things are happening in North Korea.
There's no way out of Camp 14. People live and die behind its fences, showing how powerful and scary North Korea's leaders are. While Camp 14's endless labor camps break the body, our next prison breaks the minds in ways you never thought possible. Number 19. Black Dolphin Prison, Russia. Black Dolphin Prison in Russia is a scary place where the worst criminals go. Imagine being locked up in a tiny room just 7 by 10 feet for 23 hours a day. You only get 1 hour outside in a small yard. The guards are strict and mean. The prison is designed to make inmates feel lost and scared. When they move around, they're often blindfolded, so they can't learn the layout. The worst part is the mental torture. Prisoners are watched all the time and guards often threaten them. Many end up really sad and anxious. Some even hurt themselves because it's so bad. Black Dolphin holds some of Russia's most dangerous criminals like serial killers and gang members. It's a place no one wants to end up in. If you think Black Dolphin's isolation is terrible, wait until you see the next prison. Number 18. Guantanamo Bay Detention Camp, Cuba. Guantanamo Bay is a prison camp in Cuba that the US set up after 9/11. At first they said it was for catching terrorists, but it turned into a big mess. The place is pretty rough. Prisoners are often kept alone for a long time, and some say they've been hurt or treated badly. It's like they're cut off from the world with no lawyers to help them. The weird part is that many people there haven't even been charged with a crime. They're just stuck, sometimes for years. The US tried to make special courts for them, but a lot of folks say it's not fair.
Another inmate attacked me.
At first, some people thought Guantanamo was okay, but now many are upset about it. It's become a big topic when talking about how to fight terrorism without hurting people's rights. Guantanamo's harsh methods shock the world, but the next prison's treatment of its inmates shows an even darker side of human cruelty. Number 17. Diyarbakir Prison, Turkey. Diyarbakir Prison in Turkey is a place with a real dark past. Back in the 1980s, it was known for being very cruel to its prisoners, especially those who were political activists or Kurdish. Imagine being crammed into a tiny cell with way too many people. That's what it's like there. Sadly, prisoners were often beaten and hurt in terrible ways. The prison boss was so mean, he even made prisoners salute his dog. In 1981, some prisoners went on a hunger strike to protest how bad things were. Sadly, 4 of them died. Even worse, in 1982, there was a big massacre where lots of prisoners were killed. Now, they're trying to turn the prison into a museum. It's a way to remember what happened and make sure it doesn't happen again. The chains of Diyarbakir held people down. but the next prison's walls hide horrors that will make your skin crawl. Number 16. Black Beach, Equatorial Guinea. Black Beach Prison is in Equatorial Guinea in their capital city, Malabo. This prison is known for being tough on the people locked up there. Many of them are put in jail just because they don't agree with the government. The cells are so crowded and there's not enough food or clean water. It's really dirty too, which makes people sick. What's worse, the guards often hurt the prisoners really badly. They do this to make them say things or to punish them. The world knows about how bad this place is, and lots of people have asked the government to make it better. But so far, not much has changed. It's a sad story that shows how some governments treat people who disagree with them. Black Beach's guards may control through fear, but wait until you see how the next prison keeps North Korea's worst criminals in check. Number 15. Horyong Concentration Camp, North Korea. Horyong is this really scary prison in North Korea. People who don't agree with the government get sent there, and it's not just them, their whole families too. This place is like a nightmare. People have to work super hard all day, but they barely get any food. Many get sick because there's no good doctor to help them. The guards are really mean and often hurt the prisoners for no reason. What's really sad is that some kids are born there and grow up there never knowing anything else. They don't get to play or go to school like normal kids. Some people who escaped have told stories about how bad it is. The world knows about it now, but sadly, nothing much has changed. It's a really tough place to survive. While North Korea's camp shows the darkest side of human control, our next stop takes torture to an even more brutal level. Number 14. Tadmore Prison, Syria. Tadmore Prison in Syria is a place with a really dark history. First, it was just a building for soldiers, but then it became a prison. The Assad family who ran Syria used to lock up people who didn't agree with them. The worst thing happened in 1980 when they killed about 1,000 prisoners in one day. Imagine that. It was because someone tried to hurt the president. People who were there said it was horrible. They didn't get enough food and it was super crowded. The guards were really mean and hurt the prisoners a lot. One guy who was there said it wasn't even a real prison because it was so bad. The prison closed, then opened again, and finally another group blew it up in 2015. But that was just the start. Our next prison shows us what happens when a whole system is built on breaking people's spirits. Number 13. Evin Prison, Iran. Evin Prison in Iran started back in 1972, but things got even worse after 1979 when Iran had a big change in government. The guards there do some really mean things to the people locked up. They hurt them a lot, sometimes just because they can. People who have been there say it's like a nightmare. One really sad story is about a woman named Zara Kazemi. She was a reporter who died after being hurt really badly in the prison. Another person, Nazrin Sotoudeh, keeps getting put in there just for trying to help people. In 1988, something terrible happened. They killed thousands of prisoners all at once. It made a lot of people around the world very angry. The prison is still there today, and many people are still worried about what happens inside. Though that was shocking, our next stop proves that sometimes mental torture can be worse than physical pain. Number 12. ADX Florence, United States. ADX Florence in the US is a prison, but not just any prison. They built it in 1994 to hold the worst of the worst criminals. People call it the Alcatraz of Iraqis because it's so tough to escape from. But the really scary part, it's not just about keeping people in, it's about keeping them alone. Imagine being stuck in a tiny room for 23 hours a day. Every day, no talking to anyone, no seeing the sun, nothing.
Power of the president. A system that seems to work, based on respect.
It's so quiet you might go crazy. Some people say it's worse than being dead. Sometimes prisoners stop eating, so the guards have to force feed them to keep them alive. It's a really tough place that makes you think about what punishment really means. If you thought that was tough, wait until you hear about a place where inmates were forced to torture their own friends. Number 11. Pesty Prison, Romania. Pesty Prison in Romania has a pretty dark chapter in history. Back in the late 1940s and early 1950s, this place was like a nightmare come to life. The communist government used to re-educate people who didn't agree with them. But here's the thing. The idea of re-education was just torture. They beat people, shocked them, and made them work hard with little food. The worst part is that they forced prisoners to hurt each other. Imagine being made to attack your friends. It was all to break their spirit and make them loyal to the government.
I know it's tough, and I know you miss your mom, and I was crying, man. I was crying. I miss my mom.
This went on from 1949 to 1951. When people found out, they were really angry. Some of the people responsible even got executed. It's a scary reminder of how bad things can get when power is misused. Those horrors might shock you, but the next prison's guard abuse reached new levels of horror. Hey, if you find this video interesting so far, why not give it a thumbs up? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What do you think about these prison conditions? Number 10. Kadani Prison, Georgia. Kadani Prison in Georgia has been around since the early 1980s and has a pretty bad reputation. The place is way too crowded with cells packed full of people. Imagine trying to live in a tiny space with many more roommates than you should have. It's not clean and there's not enough food or medical help. But that's not even the worst part. In 2012, some videos came out showing guards doing really awful things to prisoners. People were shocked and angry. There were big protests and some important people had to quit their jobs.
You never know how much you're alive until you face death.
The downside is the not knowing part. You're just here waiting to die.
After all that, the government said they'd make things better. They promised to fix the prison and treat people better. But it's taking a long time, and some folks aren't sure if things have changed much. Kadani's hidden cameras caught the truth, but the next prison shows what happens when guards take power too far. Number 9. Red Onion State Prison, USA. Red Onion State Prison is a super strict place in Virginia that opened back in 1998. They put the toughest criminals there, you know, the really dangerous ones. The thing is, it's not your average prison. Imagine being locked up alone for almost the whole day, every day. That's what happens there. The cells are tiny and boring and there's not much to do. People are worried about how this affects the prisoners' minds. Being alone for so long can mess you up. Some folks think it's too harsh and have even taken the prison to court over it. The guards are pretty tough too. There have been stories about them being too rough with prisoners. It's a tough place, and a lot of people think it needs to change. Red Onion's solitary cells drive men mad, but that brutality seems almost mild compared to what's coming next. Number 8. Pmore Prison, South Africa. Pmore Prison in South Africa is a pretty rough place, you know. They've got way too many people in there, like 7,000 instead of 4,000. The cells are super crowded. Sometimes there are 40 people in one room. It's no wonder diseases spread so quickly.
It's awesome that we're moving, you know what I mean? Getting back into society.
The gangs run the show inside and it gets really dangerous. Even though Nelson Mandela was once locked up there, it's still a terrible place to be. People are always getting sick or fighting. The guards have a tough time keeping everyone safe. A lot of people are trying to make things better, but it's a slow process. It's sad to think about how bad things are for the people stuck in there. If those gang fights scare you, our next stop will show you what happens when a prison removes your very identity. Number 7. Chang Prison, China. Chang Prison in China is pretty wild. When you go in, they take away your name and give you a number instead. It's like they're trying to make you forget who you are. Everything there is super strict. They control what you eat, when you can shower, and even how you sleep. Can you believe they make people keep their hands on top of their blankets all night?
Guess that's what the dog is something to get. One of the strangest days ever.
The weird thing is, they don't kill anyone there. They make people work really hard instead, hoping they'll change. Even important people who end up there have to follow the same tough rules. It's scary to think about places like this existing. It really makes you appreciate your freedom. Though losing your identity is scary, what comes next takes everything else, even your will to live. Number 6. Bang Kwang Central Prison, Thailand. Bang Kwang Prison in Thailand is called the Bangkok Hilton, but but trust me, it's no hotel. The prison's been around since 1931, and it's mostly full of guys doing time for drug crimes. It's super crowded, and people have to live in tiny cells without proper bathrooms or doctors. The scariest part, there's a death row.
But here in Thailand, I don't know why, they're killing people.
Prisoners there are all alone, waiting to be killed by injection. Can you imagine how scary that must be? Some people have tried to make things better, but it's still a terrible place. Ex-prisoners say it really messes with your body and mind. It shows how bad Thailand's prisons are and how much they need to change. That might be brutal, but this next prison proves that even France has its dark side. Number 5. Lante Prison, France. Lante Prison in Paris has been around since 1867 and is pretty famous, but not for good reasons. This place is packed. Imagine trying to fit way too many people in tiny rooms. It's so crowded that it's hard to keep clean, and there's not enough food or doctors for everyone. Some really well-known bad guys have been locked up there. That's made a lot of people pay attention to what's going on inside. The guards aren't always nice, and some prisoners say they've been treated badly. It's dark and gloomy too, with big walls that make people feel cut off from the world. Lately, some folks have been trying to make things better. They want to fix the living conditions and help prisoners with their mental health. Lante's tiny cells were terrible, but our next stop shows what happens when guards completely lose control. Number 4. Maraca National Prison, Venezuela. I've got to tell you about Maracaibo National Prison in Venezuela. It's a real nightmare. This place is so full you can barely move. It's not clean at all, and lots of folks get sick because of it. The scary part? There's fighting all the time. Prisoners hurt each other, and even the guards can be mean. It's like everyone's just trying to survive. The government doesn't help much, so there's not enough food or other basic stuff. People's minds start to break down there. Sadly, not much is being done to fix things. It's a big problem in Venezuela's prison system, and it shows how badly they need to make changes to respect people's rights. While that was pure chaos, up next we'll see what happens when nobody runs the whole show. Number 3. El Rodeo Prison, Venezuela. You won't believe what happens in El Rodeo Prison in Venezuela. It's like a real-life horror movie in there. Picture this, way too many people crammed into a space that's way too small. It's so packed that gangs are fighting for every inch of space. And get this, there's hardly any food, doctors, or even clean bathrooms. It's so messy and dirty that people are getting sick left and right. The guards, they're totally outnumbered and can't keep things under control. So the inmates are pretty much on their own, trying to survive in this crazy mess. The government keeps saying they'll fix it, but nothing ever changes. Again, it's a real eye-opener about how messed up Venezuela's prison system is. Someone needs to step up and make some serious changes. That was scary, but what's coming next shows us what true overcrowding really means. Number 2. Gama Prison, Rwanda. Gama Prison in Rwanda is like a nightmare come to life, honestly. Prisoners are crammed into a tiny space with too many people. It's supposed to hold a certain number of inmates, but they've got way more than that. The worst part is there's barely any food, clean toilets, or doctors around. It's so crowded that fights break out all the time, and with everyone squished together, diseases spread like wildfire. Living there is like being in survival mode 24/7. It's not just about staying physically healthy, the mental stress is crazy too. The big shots in charge sometimes say they'll fix things, but nothing really changes. It's a real mess, and someone needs to step up and make it better for these people. Those packed cells might seem bad, but our final stop proves that even in America, prisons can become living nightmares. Number 1. Rikers Island, United States. Rikers Island in New York has been in the news, and not for good reasons. So get this, even if you're arrested for something small, they'll make you strip down and search you everywhere. And I mean everywhere. It's crazy. But here's the real messed up part. They've got these enforcers, usually young guys who basically bully and beat up other inmates. And guess what? The guards are totally okay with it. It's not just the inmates causing trouble though. The guards can be pretty rough too. People have actually died because of how they were treated there. A lot of folks are saying they should shut the place down or at least make some big changes. Well, that's a wrap. If you enjoyed this eye-opener, hit that like button and subscribe for more shocking content. Tell us in the comments which prison fact scared you the most.